everyone, so I'm going to be talking about Ready Player One and Rampage. So to start off, I'm going to talk about Ready Player One. So I heard heaps of hype about this movie because the book is so popular. I've heard a lot of great things about the book. I was really interested in checking out the book, but because the movie was so close to coming out, I already have 100 books to read, I thought I'd go see the movie first. So watching the movie, I kind of understood the hype of wanting to live in a video game world, because as a person who loves video games for myself, I've always been interested in, like, if I could live in a video game, like, what kind of video game would it be? What kind of character would I be? Like, that is interesting. And the fact that, like, you now have the VR, it kind of gives you that kind of feeling of being in an actual video game. So the idea of a movie representing that was a pretty cool idea. But the movie itself I actually found really disappointing. Now, the major reason I found it so disappointing is because this movie and book is set in the year 2045. So, why are we hung up on 80s nostalgia still? Because that is now 65 years ago. And while I like the 80s, I wasn't born in the 80s, I am in 90s. But while I enjoy most of the things from the 80s, I understand the nostalgia of it. This film is set in 2045. Why are they so hung up on the 80s? So I understand that the creator of the game, of this world, likes the 80s, and he's that age where we understand it. But the people playing the game are mainly younger people, especially the ones we're following in the story. They are younger, so why are their characters based around the 80s? Like, why aren't they adapting to years ago? Because I feel like if my generation currently was playing this game, like, we would have characters like Lara Croft, Nathan Drake, we'd have Street Fighter characters, we'd have Tekken characters, we'd have Overwatch, we would have, like, even Fortnite now, like, we would have those kind of characters. We would not be concentrating on the 80s. And there were so many people that were kind of, like, based around Halo characters. And while Halo is very, very popular, you don't actually hear about it as much as you would hear about Overwatch, for example, right now. So, while I do like the 80s, I just found, like, this movie was really in your face, like, feel this 80s nostalgia with us, and it's just not as, like, not as impactful as it once was, because there are so many movies now that are about the 80s nostalgia and about video games as well, because you also had Pixels not long ago, which was about basically a video game coming to life in the real world, and they were basically games that were popular in the 80s. So I feel like this is way overdone. I feel like it could be done so much better if we're actually concentrating on games that are popular in this decade, or even games that were once popular and now being remade. Like, people were crazy for Crash Bandicoot coming out this year, the remastered edition. They easily could have just, actually it was last year I think now, they easily could have done Crash Bandicoot in this. Spyro is now getting remade. They could do Spyro. There is so many video games. You've got Skyrim, like Fallout. There is things that are way more popular, and the video games are way more advanced than what they're showing in the 80s. The fact that VR is now a real thing, they could have worked on that so much more. Like, show us the games that we can currently play in VR. Like, actually get people to buy the video games that are now popular. So I feel like they screwed themselves with their advertising, because I feel like if they actually released a game like this, like, people would play it. But they're not going to play a game that's set in this year, but then, like, also it's all 80s based. So my biggest thing was, I'm over the 80s nostalgia. It's in too many movies now, and it's just a constant theme of, you should like the 80s, you should miss the 80s, and most of us weren't born in the 80s that are seeing this movie. Most of us are my age now. Like, I'm 26. I was born in the 90s. Like, I'm nostalgic for the 90s now. Like, I want to see more 90s things in these movies. So that's kind of my, like, little nitpick. I'm kind of just sick of the 80s nostalgia. And the characters, I liked the characters for the most part, except the lead actor. His character I found very one-dimensional. I think it's Percival. Like, I like him in the game, but in real life, he was so boring. And, like, you're meant to care about him losing his family and, like, being scared for his life, but everything he did kind of just, like, why should I feel sorry for you? Like, you're kind of bringing this onto yourself. The other characters I enjoyed way more. Their performances I enjoyed way more. I just not enjoyed this guy at all. Even his performance was very dry. Like, it's kind of watching paint dry, like, with his facial expressions. Like, there was not much going on with him. He reminded me of Ansel Elgort, like, so much, like, his face. Like, they could have just cast him and it would be 100 times better. So the storyline itself, if you're ignoring that I was kind of over the 80s nostalgia, the storyline is enjoyable. I like the fact they have to go try and track down these keys. But the film did go way too long. It just kept dragging at the end. And like I said, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how well it's adapted, whether they cut heaps out, whether they added more than needed. I know I've been told that where the first key was found, that's completely different from the book. So obviously there are going to be some changes just to make it slightly more exciting, which is fair. I thought it was too long, and then the fact, like, I was already sick of, like, the 80s nostalgia getting thrown into our face. I didn't really enjoy Ready Player One. Like, I want to say I liked it because so many people did, and I feel like I'm just being harsh on it for no particular reason, but I didn't enjoy it. The cinematography and effects were amazing. Like, the visual effects were fantastic because you're in this game, so you're kind of seeing, like what you would actually do in a game, like make the hair move. Like, so the effects itself were fantastic. It's just everything else was severely lacking, and I didn't like it. I'm sorry to say, I really did want to like it because it was so hyped up. I'm still interested in checking out the book, but yeah, I honestly did not like Ready Player One. So the next film I'm going to talk about is Rampage. Now, actually seeing the trailer for this, it's also based off a video game, so I was kind of like, oh god, why another one? And the trailer didn't actually win me over that much. I'm like, it doesn't actually look that good. But as usual, I will basically see anything. So I went to see Rampage, and I honestly have to say, I loved it. Now, I know I was just ranting about that. I'm sick of the 80s nostalgia, and this is basically an old game. I'm not actually sure where Rampage was. Maybe it was the 80s. I'm not too sure. I have never actually played it myself. But I really enjoyed this. It was a really good movie. The Rock was fantastic. I do love The Rock's performances, but I've started to notice that his character in all the films are pretty much the exact same person. He's never a people person. He doesn't like people. He cracks the same jokes. He's always friendly and loves animals. The girl always falls head over heels for his muscles. Like, I love The Rock, don't get me wrong. I love his movies, but he is playing the same character, so it's hard to go, oh, like, this character is extraordinary when I can name like 10 movies The Rock's been in lately where it's the exact same character. Other performances were fantastic. Joe Malaggio wasn't really in it as long as I was hoping he'd be. Jeffrey Dean Morgan was fantastic. I absolutely loved him. The other performances were enjoyable, but they also weren't in it as long as I thought they were also going to be. The duration of this film was really good. The emotional impact of this film was way better than I thought it was going to be. I absolutely love George, like the gorilla. He was fantastic. And the other animals they got, there's like a wolf that flies, and there's this crocodile. Like, I don't even know what he's meant to be. Like, I think it starts as a crocodile or alligator and just some weird thing. It reminds me of Godzilla, actually, like what kind of looks like. So I know this is also based off like another game called Rampage, but actually watching this, it reminded me a lot of Monster Hunter World, which I'm really into at the moment. So it kind of made me like want to go home and play Monster Hunter. So I feel like this is actually really smart. That's also going on another popularity of something that's also kind of popular at the moment. Because a lot of the things they were fighting, especially like whatever the alligator reptile thingy was, like, he reminded me a lot of the monsters that I was currently fighting. So I feel like that's actually really cool to kind of like tie in, because there's no Monster Hunter movie. I honestly don't think there should be. So this is kind of like cool to kind of tie in, even though it's not really tying in, but like it's also what's popular at the moment, not 80s nostalgia stuff. So I really enjoyed Rampage. The cinematography was great, the special effects were great, the action sequences were fantastic. I was so, like, just watching it, I was so hyped, like, of, oh, how this is going to end, whether George will be okay. Like, I was really hyped, and this is what I find the most funny thing when I saw this movie. About 20 minutes at the end, which obviously comes to the huge conclusion, there's battles, like, we basically know where the storyline's going. Like, there's a huge battle between these animals. There is a lot of sound, and about 4 rows behind me, there's a guy that fell asleep, and I could hear him snoring. So, that is also just absolutely hilarious, because the movie was absolutely fantastic. I'm just wondering, how did he fall asleep? It's so loud. I'm like, how are you sleeping through this, and how can I hear you snoring? So it was just a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it, but I feel like that guy maybe just didn't enjoy it. If you're a fan of The Rock, I highly recommend going to see it. If you're a fan of every character he's ever played, then you'll definitely love it, because it's the same character. Like, no offense, I love The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, whatever he prefers to be called now. I do love his performances, but the characters are just the same. And like, you've got Skyscraper coming out, which looks the exact same character. Like, I don't think he's ever going to play a different character. So Ready Player One, I would give a hard miss to. I know a lot of people love it, but I just didn't like it at all. And Rampage, I highly recommend going to check it out. It was fantastic, and just the way they're communicating with The Rock and George, like, it was so wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot of the film. So, thanks as always for watching. That's all I have for you at the moment. But I am going to see Infinity War on Wednesday, so that will be my next review. Thanks, guys. Bye.